Welcome to Fresh Catholic, a podcast for those who are converting, reverting, or simply want a fresh perspective of the Catholic faith to help them to open their hearts and minds to become closer to the love and goodness of Christ. My daily prayer is that I will be a bright light to others, to be filled with the love and light of Christ, so that when people look at me, they see Him radiating out from me for His glory. Hello and welcome. I'm Lori Balderas, and I'm so happy you're here. My guest today is Joseph Nicolosi, Jr., PhD. He is a licensed clinical psychologist, author, researcher, and clinical director at the Breakthrough Clinic in Southern California. He oversees what is likely the largest clinic in the world that specializes in helping men with unwanted same-sex attractions. His therapy focuses on trauma treatment. Those sexual attraction changes are a byproduct. He is the president of the Reintegrative Therapy Association, a 501c3 nonprofit organization. Dr. Nicolosi has provided expert testimony in multiple legislative hearings across the United States on so-called conversion therapy bans, laws that would prevent therapists from helping clients with unwanted same-sex attractions. He has appeared on national network television news programs and podcasts, and has written for The Federalist and The Washington Examiner. He received his PhD in 2009 from the Chicago School of Professional Psychology. Please listen with an open mind to my guest, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, Jr. Well, welcome, Dr. Joseph Nicolosi, Jr. How are you today?
Great. Thanks for having me.
I am so excited to have you, not only because I think you're a very important person that we need to get on our podcast today, but you're also somebody I'm very friendly with. I've known you for many, many years now, and I think that this is going to be a very important episode of mine today. And so before we get started, I just have something I want to say to my listeners. So put a pin in it there, won't you? To my listeners out there, today this episode is going to be kind of a hot topic, I would say. There's going to be some sensitive things we're talking about regarding same-sex attraction, unwanted same-sex attraction, and homosexuality. And before you push pause or stop this episode, I'm going to ask you that you kind of put your preconceived notions and your prejudices over to the side. I realize that the topics we're talking about today have divided families and friendships and our nation and our world even. And I know that people have very personal experiences and reasons for their thought processes. But I'm going to ask you to please listen to this episode. Don't turn away. This Dr. Nicolosi here is very educated, very knowledgeable, and I have a personal experience with him because my son, as many of you know, or maybe you don't know because you're new to my podcast, my son is gay. So I love my son, and I don't have hate or animosity towards any group of people. And so I would like you to please listen with an open heart and an open mind to this episode, and let's get some education about these subjects. So that is my hope and prayer and my wish. So now, with that being said, Joseph, I really appreciate you coming today. I want to start off by saying that when I met you, it was kind of an interesting way to meet you. And what I learned from you has been life-changing for me. It's been something that just lit a light bulb. It was a light bulb moment for me that I wasn't even expecting to know about or learn about. And I want to start off by telling my listeners how we met. And then I want you to explain to me what you told me the day we met. because I listen to you on different podcasts, or I've listened to you in all many different ways. And I would like this episode to be a little different than what you're used to doing, because we do have a history, and I think many people aren't going to know what you're about to tell them, because I certainly didn't know. So when we met, it was, I want to say, around, I think, 8 years ago. And my husband Simon and I, who's my producer also, he and I got invited by a colleague of ours, a mutual colleague of ours, to a meeting. And at that meeting, I wasn't even supposed to go that day. It was just supposed to be Simon going to meet you. And I ended up going along. I think it was God drew me there that day. We sat down to have a conversation with you. I knew nothing about you. I'd never even heard of you before. I don't think you knew me, certainly. We sat at this small table in a small office. You and I sat across from each other. Simon was on one end. You were on, sorry about that. You were on the other side, or our friend was on the other side. You proceeded to tell us this formula you had. I guess that's what I'll call it, a formula about homosexuality and same-sex attraction. And I'm sitting there across from you. Even the colleague knew nothing about my story or my son's story. And you start telling this formula, and I'm sitting there listening to you. I didn't say a single word. You presented this formula, and I sat there stunned at what you were saying, because, and I'm going to have you explain it to my listeners, but when you were explaining this, the wheels in my brain were spinning, and I was thinking, he's talking about me and my family. The formula was me and my family and my son. And I was thinking, this is incredible what he's saying. And I'd never heard it. I never had knowledge of this. So if you could be so kind as to explain to my listeners this formula, and change the wording if you'd like. I'm sure I'm saying it incorrectly. But please, will you tell my listeners what you told Simon and I that day?
We'll be right back. What does it mean to live a life of faith? What does it mean to live as a Catholic Christian? Hi, this is Bishop Kevin Sweeney, host of the podcast Beyond the Beacon. Join me as we unravel and discuss the mysteries of our faith, of the church, of living as Catholic Christians. Be inspired by engaging interviews with priests and seminarians, deacons, religious, women and men who live the life of faith day by day here in our Diocese of Paterson, in food pantries and classrooms and parishes and ministry. How is God working in their lives today? How is God working in our lives? Join me as I ask them and be part of the conversation on Beyond the Beacon. Listen and follow Beyond the Beacon wherever you get your podcasts, or watch it on my YouTube channel. Please check the show notes for more details. Thank you and God bless you.
Sure. So let's go back to the beginning. My father was a clinical psychologist. He treated more men than anybody in the world with unwanted same-sex attractions. He treated well over 1,000 people. And he learned nothing about the development of same-sex attraction or any potential cause, or can it be changed. He learned none of this in graduate school. He got no training in it. But he, as he was beginning his practice as a Catholic psychotherapist, he began noticing two things. He started with two observations. With men who had same-sex attractions, the two simple observations were, number one, if a client came into the office we'd never met before, and the client appeared a little defensive, sheepish, guarded, Dr. Nicolosi, would you like me to sit here? Would you like me to sit there? Well, like if there was a guarded, ill-at-ease quality to it, he noticed that those men were more likely to eventually describe having same-sex attractions. And if a guy kind of sits down, opens the door, sits down, and just plops down on the couch and starts thoughtlessly talking about whatever in a very casual way, that was likely to be a guy who was less likely to have same-sex attractions. So he noticed that the men, this is before the internet, okay? This is before any of that stuff. So when they opened the door to meet him, this is like meeting a brand new person. So it wasn't about him because they knew nothing about him. Some of these men had a more guarded quality to them, and those were the men who were more likely to have same-sex attractions versus the men who didn't. Okay, that's observation number one. Observation number two is the men who had same-sex attractions kept describing basically the same childhood. All these different men from these different places would come in, and they're describing incredibly similar patterns. And so my father started noticing this. He went into the psychoanalytic literature, and he discovered, lo and behold, an entire body of scientific literature that no one is talking about. And so he began pulling these things together, and he began noticing some trends from the psychoanalytic literature. And the basic synthesis is this. When we distill it, the idea is that as kids grow up, they go through different developmental stages. Now, you're a mother, so you know a 7-year-old and a 1-year-old are experiencing very different things. And stages of development are pretty much identical for boys and girls up until about 2.5 years of age. That's what we psychologists call the gender identity phase of development. This is the first time when a boy has an additional developmental task that the girl doesn't have, which is to disidentify from the mother and identify with the father. This is around the age when a boy is trying to figure out what it means to be a boy or a girl and is making his gender a part of his identity. And you can see this in cultures around the world. You can go to a daycare up the street near you. You can go over to China. You'll see, doesn't matter, boys at this age are reaching out to other males to connect and be just like them. And there's the imitative behaviors. And it is thought that if the boy at this phase of development is experiencing, and this is not about even necessarily objective reality, this is about what's going on, how the boy is experiencing the world. If the boy experiences his father as distant, critical, his mother as more sometimes over-involved, sometimes highly anxious, and if the boy is temperamentally sensitive, it is thought that these factors together make it more difficult for this particular boy to make that gender identity shift. And he'll try to reach out to the father and try to connect, but eventually, if his repeated attempts are not reciprocated, the boy experiences a hurt and he retreats back to the mother for emotional connection and support and doesn't make that gender identity shift. And so as time goes on, this boy will get his emotional needs met primarily from girls, and versus his other male peers. His other male peers were getting their needs met primarily from their male relationships, namely male attention, male affection, male approval, while this boy misses out. Many of my clients have described their childhoods, and most of my clients have same-sex attractions. And they would describe their childhoods as they'd say, like the kitchen window boy. I'm looking at other kids, other boys, and they're roughhousing and they're playing sports and they're doing these competitive things. And I want to connect with these boys, but I also feel apprehensive about this. And I'm looking at them through the kitchen window, and I'm here with my mom and my sisters, and they're braiding their hair and they're doing these different things. And my clients in their childhoods, they experienced other males as mysterious, intriguing, and exciting. And they also felt an unmet need for male attention, affection, and approval. And so what eventually happens is these guys who I'm gonna stereotype a little bit here. I'm giving some generalities, but around this age, these boys present as shy, timid, lonely, lacking confidence with sports, sometimes, in some cases, having had experience of sexual abuse with an older male. These clients will want to connect with other guys, but have this difficulty, and in early adolescence, those unmet needs become sexualized. Slowly, gradually, usually around 14 years old, these feelings emerge. And what initially started as a sense of excitement toward other good-looking, confident guys eventually becomes sexualized in early adolescence. And the boy will feel like he doesn't know what to do with these feelings. He'll sometimes try to pray that they'll go away. He'll try to suppress the thoughts. He'll try to ignore them. He'll try to make himself attracted to girls, but he doesn't know. And nevertheless, these feelings typically do not go away. And around this time, the boy is starting to hear this word. The word is gay. And the gay label, it's like a double-edged sword, because on one hand, the gay label brings a sense of relief. It's like, finally, like there's a name for this thing I've been going through and an explanation now for why I have felt different for so long. So in that sense, the gay label brings relief. On the other hand, it can reinforce the boy's notion that, wow, I really am different from other males around me. I am a different type of guy than most other guys. And so that strengthens that barrier, that feeling of differentness. Now I have a label. Now I have a different category. Those are regular guys. I'm a different kind of guy. And so what my clients will often say is that they will begin to notice that the kinds of guys that they're attracted to, it's not random. It's not all guys. It's specific guys. And what they often will notice is that they find themselves attracted to particular characteristics of other men, if they really slow down and pay attention to it. And those features that they find themselves drawn to, even irresistibly drawn to, are oftentimes the very characteristics that they would like to have for themselves. So let me give you an example. I have countless examples. But a man who I saw yesterday said that the kind of guy he's a Caucasian guy. The kind of man he's attracted to is Latin, darker skin, and a little bit lighter hair, he said, and defined facial features. Those were things that were very important to him. And, okay, so we went through this whole description of the kind of man he's attracted to. And then I asked him, okay, well, tell me about your ideal self, the kind of man you would like to be. And we created a whole list. And sure enough, that was also in the list. The number one thing, I wish I had my jaw. I wish I had more defined features. And I feel kind of like pasty white. I wish I were, it's summertime right now, and I wish my skin were darker. And anyway, we would go through the whole list, and it was the same things he was attracted to. When a man often will come in and say, the kind of guy I'm interested in is like Arnold Schwarzenegger, big and bulky. Usually when I ask him eventually later on, tell me about your ideal self. Oh, big and bulky. Or another man said, no, like a swimmer, a lean. That's the kind of look that I'm into. Usually that's the kind of look he would like for himself. And so what many of these men discover is that within the attraction lies a key to understanding themselves. That the kind of guy I'm attracted to represents the missing part of my own masculine identity. Now, before we go further, this is not a thing that I made up. This is not even a thing that my father made up, okay? This goes back to Freud. Freud noticed this. Carl Jung, another prominent worldwide known analyst, he mentioned it. He noticed it in his own clients. There are over 50 research studies, doctoral dissertations, medical journal articles that are describing this phenomenon. But none of us are talking about it. We're not being told about it. And there are even some instances where when people describe this and talk about it, it's labeled hate speech. I haven't even gotten through the full list of citations on this, going through the psychoanalytic literature. I'm at 50. We may go beyond 50. I'm compiling a list. It takes up a lot of my time. No one is being told about this. And so what my clients have found, again, this is not me telling them, they're describing this, just like Freud's clients and Jung's clients and many, many others worldwide. They're describing there's an interesting parallel that no one is talking about. That what my clients will say is, there are some days when my homosexual attractions are stronger, and there's other days when they're weaker. I can go 2-3 days and it's like I don't even notice it. But then there are other days where it's like I cannot get it off of my mind. And what they discover is on the days when those attractions feel very, very strong, very compelling and irresistible, those are typically the days when the client feels very different from the guy he's attracted to, categorically different. And on days when he feels more similar to that guy, then the attractions are often weaker. So the psychoanalyst would say the exotic becomes erotic. And this is not about homosexuality, this is about human sexuality. The exotic becomes erotic. People will eroticize things that are exciting and different and intriguing. We see this in if you want to go really extreme, we see this in fetishes as well. but it seems to be a human phenomenon. And so many of my clients have noticed that when they are getting their needs for male attention, male affection, and male approval met in non-sexual ways, those attractions toward other guys begin to shift. They begin to diminish on their own without even trying to change them. When they experience themselves more like what they would call a guy among guys, whatever that means to them, it's different for every man. They don't have to be macho. This is not that kind of thing. But when they experience themselves as feeling like I connect with other guys and this is a place of belonging in my male relationships, they notice their attractions spontaneously decreasing. These are things that nobody is talking about. We should be able to have an open discussion about these things. So that is a basic description of the men I work with, and it's a basic intro to my father discovered.
Well, thank you so much for that. I can tell since you presented it to me all those years ago. I mean, I know you have a lot more clients under your belt in the past 8 years. I mean, this is just a part of your life. And one of the reasons that I really wanted you to come on this show is I want you to be able to say what you have to say about this. I realize that people don't want to talk about these things. They slam the door unless you're going to say everything they want to hear. They don't want to hear what you have to say. And that's why the day that I met you, Simon and I, like I said, did not say one word. We let you say what you had to say. I really had to process it. It really hit me like a ton of bricks because you were describing my family. Like I say, my situation was that my son is the youngest of 3 children. I was in a horrible car accident. His father was so focused on me and my recovery after my accident, and him, my child as a baby, and the other 2 that were babies, that my husband's, it wasn't that he was a neglectful father, like he wasn't in the home. He was focused on the care of his disabled wife, which was me. And my daughter kind of hovered over her baby brother. I certainly, when his dad wasn't there, I did what you said. Like I would pick up, like I would just scoop him up, and his sister would scoop him up. And he was very, artistic, and he wasn't sporty and all those things. And his older brother was like a tough bullying type older brother, which was another characteristic you had talked about. And
Yes.
so it was exactly what you described. And my son, I didn't know that he was having any sort of feelings of any kind. I mean, that certainly he never said he liked boys or was even thinking about boys. That never came up. And he came out to me, I think he was like in his early 20s, came out of the blue. I wasn't expecting it at all. It was like not anywhere near on my radar at all. He told me he didn't come out sooner because I was becoming Catholic, and he thought I was going to have to disown him, which isn't true. That's an incorrect statement and an incorrect thought that he had. I didn't turn my back on him. I love my son. It's just it wasn't what I was expecting to hear. And I do feel like what you said, where when a person, doesn't have any other thing that they can think to do except for, oh, well, I'm gay and that's what I am and that's it. And I need to embrace it. And what do I do now? And that's what I thought was like, oh, well, that's when you figure out that's what you are or think that you are, the gay community really does welcome you in, and it's just the answer. And when I met you and learned more about this, I thought, oh, but what about the people that don't want to embrace their same-sex attraction? What about those people? And so we're going to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'd like to talk more about like what you do for the people that have the unwanted same-sex attraction. How's that sound?
Sounds great.
Okay, we'll be right back. We'll be right back. What is happening at Fresh Catholic? Thanks for asking. Well, we have a weekly podcast with lots of topics and guests, and Fresh Catholic Daily, the daily Mass readings. Listen on all platforms and watch on YouTube. I also do short videos every day on Instagram and Facebook at Fresh Catholic. Like, share, subscribe, rate, and review. These are such simple ways to help us out. The other ways you can support our mission of drawing people to the faith or back to the faith are by becoming a Patreon or sponsor. Also simple, but so needed. Our website, freshcatholic.com, has an online store with merchandise, a blog, comics, and Fresh Catholic courses with educator Charles Merritt, with the Hail Mary, the Our Father, the Virtues, the Ascension, the Magi, the Visitation, the Ten Commandments, Sacraments and Grace, Sin, Advent, Angels, Lent, Typology, and even some Bible study courses. Wow, that's a lot. Please share all of this with everyone you know and join the Fresh Catholic family. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. And we're back. I hope you're all still listening because it's getting good, isn't it? Don't go away. Okay. So, Joseph, we were saying before the break that when somebody has an idea that they are gay, might be gay, whatever, they're just coming into this, they're kind of just resigned to the fact that, oh, well, I'm gay, so this is my life now. So when somebody has same-sex attraction, but it's not what they want, it doesn't feel right to them. This might be, like, correct me if I'm wrong, but this could be when they first have this inclination like, oh my gosh, I think I might be gay. And then they seek out somebody who's going to reinforce that, I would imagine. But maybe at that point, maybe a little down the road, maybe farther down the road, they think, wait a second, this isn't what I want. And if I remember correctly, kind of the way that your father was introduced to this was that Catholic priests were reaching out to him and saying they had a lot of gentlemen coming to them saying that they had unwanted same-sex attraction. And those were the gentlemen that the priests were guiding to your dad. And then he kind of was noticing these traits, and it became a pattern that he noticed. Excuse me. So one thing I do know about you is that you have never given me the impression that you are against gay people, that you're hateful towards gay people, that you're going out and scooping them up off the street and dragging them in to your office, or that other people are doing that. You are a doctor that's there for the gentlemen or the people that come to you with a multiple of issues and problems that they don't want, and that you want to help them to become their most authentic self. And in my opinion, that is what a therapist is for. I've been in therapy myself, and I've gone, not for same-sex attraction, but I've gone to therapy because I've had unwanted feelings and thoughts. And I go to the therapist and they help me through those things. And so I personally don't see the difference of if a person comes to you with a porn addiction, if a person comes to you with they're an adulterer, or same-sex attraction, they're coming to you because they need relief and help. And my personal belief is you should be able to be there to do that. It's not up to other people to dictate if a person goes to a therapist for something unwanted. So again, I don't think you're going out and you're grabbing people and dragging them into your office. When they come to you, when they come to you, how do you approach that with them? Like, do they even know that it's a thing, that maybe they don't have to just live the gay lifestyle? Do they know that there's another option?
Many of my clients, their goal is to live a life consistent with their values. including as it relates to their sexuality. So it's usually just a part of the bigger picture. And that's usually what many people of faith, and many of my clients are people of faith, usually Christian, but there's also Jewish, Muslim. Their goal in therapy is to live a life consistent with their values, including as it relates to their sexuality. And they oftentimes do not know that there are options. They're being presented by the media with two options. This is what they think. You celebrate these attractions, create an entire identity around it, and that's who you are. That's who you'll always be. Or you suppress it, and you're going to live a miserable life. You could do it, but you're going to have a miserable life, and it's going to be the most horrible thing ever. That's it. Suppress or celebrate. They're not told any, middle ground. And the middle ground is that you don't need to we tell our clients, I tell my clients, you don't need to try to change your sexual attractions. In the work that we do, and anybody can go to reintegrativetherapy.com, reintegrativetherapy.com. You can click on science, see the papers, the scientific evidence. You can look at the videos. The videos are fantastic to watch step by step. What does this look like? What are these evidence? Is there evidence to this? Is there anything published? And if so, what are the processes? You can see we're not, the therapist never, and client never need to try to change the client's sexuality. So for example, what we have found, and it's not just me, but independent researchers have found that when we treat traumatic memories, the sexual attractions can often change on their own. This is the Peel and Sutton study. There's many other studies on this as well. Again, go to Reintegrative Therapy, click on science. I won't bore your listeners. I have them all memorized, but for those who are interested, go there. The Peel and Sutton study, the Cornine study, and others. Treating trauma memories often leads to spontaneous sexual attractions, changes for people. So many clients, to answer your question, Lori, are surprised to know that there's a sensible middle ground here that they can find. And I think it's important that we define terms right away. That when we talk about change in sexuality, let's be really clear. We're not talking about flipping a light switch, gay to straight. That's not what we're talking about. Think in terms of turning, rotating a light dimmer. We're talking about gradual shifts of varying degrees, and it's important that we don't oversimplify or overstate these results. Everyone responds differently, and no one can guarantee an outcome, but the scientific data that people are not being told about by the media and the psychological establishment, there's this growing body of literature now that sexual attractions can change as a result, sometimes without therapy, actually. In fact, by the way, if every one of your listeners, if you think about it, probably every single one of us knows one person in our lives, maybe it's an extended family member or a friend, we know at least one person who probably never even went to therapy and had one sexual label at one point in their life and then had a different one later. So we know in many cases that without therapy, people's sexual attractions can change. But the newer studies are now showing, yes, there's specific methods that do seem to be associated with changes. One is a recent one that we just did last year, actually just last year, a matter of months ago. And if you have the slide, great. You can put up on the slide to show people, those who are watching instead of listening, but you can see we did a randomized placebo-controlled trial, and we used something called memory reconsolidation, the memory reconsolidation process. We did an 8-minute intervention. We tested some 8-minute interventions against a placebo, and we saw the vividness, arousal, and emotionality of those unwanted sexually arousing memories. We saw them decrease by up to 50%. And the goal of the Reintegrative Therapy Association is not to get anybody to be different in their sexuality. Our job is to conduct research, present this information to the public. We provide trainings for therapists, very low-cost training for therapists so they can learn to do this in their own practice. We want to make this information available to the public because the public is not being told that this is an option.
Thank you for that. I do feel like, I mean, I don't have to tell you this, but there's such negativity in our world, and people have just dug their heels in about so many topics. This being one of the most major topics is nobody wants to talk about it. Again, it's like, no, you're gay, and you're going to be gay, and you're going to stay gay, and you're going to be a part of our group here. And if you even think you're going to leave, we're going to make your life miserable, There's that threat of things like that. I believe that, I mean, I see it happening in the world. It's like, even if, and it's not just in that, it's in many, many things. When people have a set stance on something, they don't want to hear it. They don't, it's like I say, the minute somebody hears you're on this show, I don't want it to be where they immediately turn it off. They immediately start bashing the episode. Everybody needs to stop, calm down, listen. You might learn something. You might get some education. If you decide that you listen to this or listen to anything you have to offer, and they don't want to believe it, or they don't want to, it's like this, la, 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 we don't want to hear it, that's unfortunate, because you're not helping yourself. You're not helping other people. You might actually learn something. You might actually help somebody. It's not to say that, oh, you're going to magically listen to this and you're going to change your ways and all of a sudden you're magically not gay anymore. It's not that. But I want people to give things a chance. Hear people out. What if this changes somebody's life? What if they listen or watch this and say, oh my gosh, I had no idea that I had another alternative to this lifestyle. I know for a fact you have certain clients that have gone from a highly gay sexual life to being married to a woman and having children with women. And they're leading a completely different life because they gave it a chance. I mean, is that safe to say?
That's safe to say. I mean, this is really, I think the core of the issue is that the client should be in the driver's seat. Clients should be able to pick their own therapy goals. That's it. They should be able to live a life consistent with their values. The client should be able to pick his goals and values, not the therapist, not the psychological establishment. And the client should be in the driver's seat. They should be able to explore their options. That's what we're saying. They should be able to explore their options. They should have access to the scientific literature in a way that isn't censored by big tech or the psychological establishment. People should be able to know that they have options and then be able to choose. That's truly empowering people.
Well, and I think people just have it completely stuck in their craw, as they say, about the whole conversion therapy stigma. They don't even want to listen to where we are today. They don't even want to look at the research. And this goes for a lot of things we're dealing with. It's like they hear something, they're stuck on a topic, and they don't want to learn or get knowledge. I think they're threatened by it. I think this is what I imagine, because it's so plain as day to me. Like you say, it's on social media. It's everywhere. The second you say anything, like I say, you're talking very educated, very reasonably right now. I know you as a person. I know you're not a hateful person. You have devoted your life to this. You have devoted your life to helping other people to find, their best, beautiful life. And I think they're being, held back from that. And that's devastating. I feel like I can't imagine turning around years from now if I were a gay person thinking this is just my life. And then I find out later, maybe I take the time to listen to what you have to say. And I think, oh, my whole life could have been different. I know of a person where that was their take of it. It's like, what if I would have never known this? I mean, and that could be for a lot of things. And I really feel so impassioned by allowing you this platform to get this out. And I want people to really listen and learn more. We will put links in the show notes so people can look at this themselves. It's like, I'm not telling people what to do. You're not even telling people what to do. It's just offering knowledge, and I challenge people. I challenge you to go look at it, read it, watch Dr. Nicolosi's videos, check out what he has to say with an open mind, and you might actually learn something. You might actually think, oh man, I really need to seek out this kind of therapy. And then you go seek it out. Nobody's going to drag you there. Seek it out yourself, because it could mean just your world could be open. I know there's times where I'm hoping sometime my son might look into this. I'm not going to present it to him because he's not open to that. But it's for people who want to explore it. If he enjoys his lifestyle and he wants to stay in his lifestyle, I'm not trying to talk him out of it. I love him. I wish the best for him. I want him to be happy and thriving, but I'm not going to just, say, well, if you don't check this out, I'm not going to be your mother anymore. And, I need you to change, or, that's not what it's about. So I do think it's unfortunate that more people don't give you a chance and listen. And I know that you're shut down oftentimes, and I just think that's unfortunate. Is your practice, do you find that you're getting more clients? Do you find that you're having a lot of success stories with men that are, finding their way into a different version of their life that they didn't expect after coming to your therapy?
They would say that they're stepping into a version of themselves that feels more authentic. And yes, and if anyone wants to hear the stories of these men, again, reintegratithetherapy.com, a fantastic documentary called Free to Love, which was individuals who said, I want to explore monogamous heterosexuality. And it goes into their lives, the lives of these clients who've been through reintegrative therapy. And I think it's a great documentary. There's evidence that we are not being told about on a broader scale. You mentioned silencing, Lori, and here's an example of a very interesting study that's being silenced. Media is not talking about this at all. We have these two different viewpoints here about the development of same-sex attractions, and right now we're just focusing on male same-sex attractions for today, but two different basic frameworks. The one espoused by the LGBT activists, which is to say that the boy's homosexuality is biologically predetermined. Because across the board, people will acknowledge, and this is clearly in the psychological literature, men who identify as gay, generally speaking, have strained relationships with their fathers. Okay, it's clear. The question is why? So one viewpoint espoused by the LGBT theorists and activists and researchers is to say that the boy's homosexuality is biologically predetermined, and that caused the father to withdraw because of the father's own conscious or unconscious homophobia. Okay, so that's one explanation. The other explanation that we talked about, that Freud and others of many of these other psychoanalysts have talked about, is that the distant critical actions of the father. In fact, if you really want to get precise, because when I mentioned psychoanalysis, the psychoanalysts termed this something like paternal narcissistic dissociation. Paternal narcissistic dissociation. Basically, dad is in his own world. I experience dad as being in his own world, and he pops out from time to time to criticize me, and then he goes back into his world. That's what these guys tell me over and over, and this is my clients, and this is what the psychoanalyst termed it. So, okay, so we had the one explanation. The other explanation is that no, those behaviors from the father cause the son to feel rejected and disidentify from the father and develop the same-sex attractions because of the boy's own unmet needs for male attention, affection, and approval. So we have these two very competing theories here. So which one is correct? This debate has been going on for like 60 years. There is a researcher named Sherry Golden, Dr. Sherry Golden. She devoted her doctoral dissertation to answer this question. Of the two theories, which one has a stronger scientific basis? And she measured 70 fathers of gay-identified men with 3 well-established psychological assessments. These fathers were found to exhibit indirect, non-nurturing, or low engagement types of father involvement activities with their gay-identified sons, as opposed to direct, high nurturing and high involvement activity. Okay, now that was interesting, but what Dr. Golden did was she took it a step further and she looked at the fathers and asked them about their relationships with their own fathers. It turns out that these fathers reported very similar fathering from their own fathers. And so what we might be seeing is what's called an intergenerational transmission of attachment patterns through the male line that may set the stage for male homosexuality. And there are many who believe that the boy with the more sensitive temperament is more likely to interpret the father's actions as rejection, and that causes the boy to shift away. And now a person may say, okay, but why weren't the fathers homosexual? If they were fathered in such a similar way, what happened to them? How come they're not gay identified? And there may be several reasons for this. The fathers themselves may have had a different temperament from the son. The fathers may have had a different relationship with their mothers. There may not have been sexual abuse in the father's life, but there may have been in the boy's life. And there may have been a different peer relationship, more of a relationship of equals. And that goes back to something that you alluded to earlier, Laura. You talked about your son's relationship with his older brother. Over and over and over, these clients say that if they have an older brother, especially an older brother who the age range is just a few years off, meaning that they grew up in the same household, it's often a feared, hostile relationship with the older brother that accentuates the boy's sense of rejection from the male world. This is what they tell me. This is what the psychoanalysts reported in the literature that is being covered over. But so we got Dr. Golden's findings here, and we see that what the ultimate conclusion of Golden's work is, look, it's probably a constellation of factors, but for sure the relationship with the father seems to play a causative role. It's not just correlation, it's causation, because she was able to go back a further generation and look at the father's relationship with his own father. Now, some people will say, well, I had a distant relationship with my father, and you should have seen my mother. She was, micromanaging every element of my life. How come I didn't turn out gay? And when I talk to people who have these stories, what they'll often tell me is that during those early ages, they often had a male surrogate, a male identification figure. Usually the grandfather, but mostly the grandfather, but sometimes an uncle or a mentor or something like that, who played a really significant role in that person's life. So it's a constellation of factors. What we're talking about today is a pattern. There's a difference between a pattern that's emerging and then exact universal rules for every single person. All we're saying is the pattern should be able to be discussed and people should be able to make their own choice if this fits for them. If it doesn't fit for them, that's fine.
Right. And I, as you're saying that, I'm thinking about our particular situation. And one of the things, how you're talking about when the boys are 2.5, like the baby age. But then you were talking about later, the teenage years, and they start, looking at other boys in an attraction way. And one of the things that I have always thought about is, like you said, where I feel they have, kind of low self-esteem for themselves. They're not feeling super strong and manly, like maybe their dad is, or their older brother or whatever, as they're growing up. And then they look at these other boys, and again, it's like maybe what they would like to be. They look at them and they're attracted to them. But the way I look at it is they are attracted to them because they admire them. They want to be them. I have often said this, that I feel women do this too. I've done this too, where I will look at another, like let's say back when I was a teenager, I loved women. I loved the beauty of women. I wasn't, just fixated on them. Ultimately, I became a model and a photographer. So that's one reason I think I really loved women and the look of them. But if at that time, if I would have said to somebody, I just love women, I think they're beautiful and magical, and, I collect photos of them. If somebody were to say, oh, well, you know what, you're gay then. and I was like, given that thing, and I go, am I? Am I gay? Because I'm attracted to women. Well, what if that would have taken me down that path? But that wasn't what I was doing. I had a different, do you know what I'm saying? Like, if a boy has those feelings and he's told, oh, well, the answer is you're gay, instead of, oh, well, what do you admire about them? Like, what do you like about them? What do you find cool about them or attractive about them? And then just sit in that moment. And don't even get me started on the trans stuff, because I feel like if a little girl wants to go play baseball, maybe she just wants to play baseball. If a little boy wants to, I don't know, paint nails, it doesn't mean he wants to be a girl. It's, maybe he's a hard rocker. Like, let's not just put a big statement and stigma on people. I think there's all kinds of people. And when you label them and make them think that they're stuck in this, not stuck, but if you're giving them a label of something that might not be true.
And they are kind of stuck. If you're putting a label, they are kind of, labels literally stick. So they are feeling stuck to a label, especially when you do that to a child.
Right.
Yes.
So, I just think that I almost feel like, and maybe this isn't going to sound great, but I feel like you are given this stigma of you're dragging people into your office, or doctors like you are doing that. But I kind of feel like the LGBT, trans and all those people, they're actually taking people and they're not dragging them in, but they're saying, come, like, join us. There's no way out. This is it. Like, you have to join, and this is you. And, this is it. This is the best thing ever. And there's no leaving. And I think that's an interesting turn of events.
Selective tolerance.
Selective tolerance.
Yeah. We welcome people into the LGBT community, but then we try to block them when they try to leave. And then in the name of anti-bullying, the LGBT activists, in some cases, end up being the real bullies when they tell people they're not allowed to leave. And there are some individuals who discourage others from leaving LGBT, sometimes overtly or not. And I would, maybe they don't even mean to. Maybe they're not even doing it with malice. They honestly think that they're doing the right thing with the label. And it may not be, I guess, I'm assuming in many cases it's not done with malevolence. It really isn't. And there are some people who I would love to do a debate with on your show, a respectful, academically oriented, we call it, the term for this is respectful criticism, respectful disagreement, intellectual disagreement. I'd love to do that on your show at some point, and I would be happy to debate Gregory Coles, Preston Sprinkle, or Dr. Julia Sadusky, individuals who have criticized reintegrative therapy. I would formally challenge them and invite them to do a debate on your show in which we get equal time. And the rule is no personal attacks. We only talk about ideas, not personal attacks. And I think that's the kind of constructive dialogue that would be better for everybody. And ultimately, let the public make their own decisions about what they think.
Well, I would absolutely love to do that, because, like I said, first of all, I don't come with hate to anybody or any group. I was raised by a man who loved all cultures and all peoples. And like I say, I love my son who's gay, and I would welcome any of those three to come on my show. I'm putting out a call to action. If any of you would like to come, I would love to have you do a debate with these people, have it be very calm and factual. I want to hear the everybody's side of the story, and then, like you say, let the audience and the people decide. Because if you're only ever hearing one side of something, how can you have an educated knowledge of it?
Yeah. Exactly. You are not getting an education if you're only hearing one side of a topic. And this is the problem with psychology graduate schools. People are not being told there's other information that contradicts the prevailing worldview. And that's a problem. That's indoctrination, not education. In real education, we get a diversity of viewpoints, and then we hash them out in a respectful term. That's how we've been doing it throughout history.
Right.
So I think that would be.
So if you're out there listening, please contact Fresh Catholic and let's set up a debate. One last thing, as I've known you for 8 years, and this has been, I have knowledge of this from when the first time you told me about this, alternative way of, a different way than just being in the gay lifestyle. I have often thought, I wonder if things would have been different had I had this knowledge, when my son was growing up. If I would have handled things differently. Like I said, I really had no knowledge that he had these thoughts. I think it's safe to say, and I think you kind of briefly touched on it, but you're not born this way. That's a fallacy. Isn't that true? It's when people say, I'm born this way, I've always been this way, I've been gay my whole life. That's a big statement. I don't know that that's a true statement though, correct?
The Reintegrative Therapy Association doesn't take an official stance on the cause of homosexuality. We would just say, look at the scientific data. And there was actually a study, a gene study, the Ganna et al. Study, I think it was 2019 or 2020, sequencing the human genome. And no, they said clearly there's no one gene that causes human sexuality. Human sexuality is far too complex. And the overall data, looking at the twin studies, especially monozygotic twins, genetically identical twins, and those studies show that the overwhelming evidence is early environmental. In fact, there are 2 small studies on genetically identical twins raised apart. This is very hard to get. Genetically identical twins who were separated at birth and also happen to be males with same-sex attractions. Okay, so we're talking pretty small sample sizes. But when we look at those, an average, and we get about 10% concordance rate, meaning about 90% of the influences appear to be environmental. And study after study appears to show that it's predominantly environmental. And again, that's another thing I'd be happy to debate anybody about.
I would love that. Yeah, I feel like a debate would be great. And I so appreciate your time today. I know you're just one of the busiest men I know. And I hope that this has helped you to feel like you were able to say what you wanted to say. And, I support what you're doing. I support the people that want to come and seek therapy. And, I do think it's good for people to listen and learn and make up their own minds and know that you're not against these people, you're trying to help them.
Thank you. And I feel gratitude toward you for being willing to have this discussion, because your courage to do this gives voice to people who are being silenced. Their story, as one man said to me this week, he said, I wish my younger self knew about this, and I wasn't able to have any access to this information. So thank you for your courage in being willing to have the conversation.
Right. Well, I would like to help people too. So thank you for coming today. I hope you're all still listening, and please share this with your friends. And let's learn, and knowledge is power, and that's how we can help others. So thank you, Joseph. Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Love you. Bye. Thank you for joining me today. Now go out and be a bright light in someone's life. And remember, be focused, be faithful, and be fresh. Fresh Catholic is produced, edited, and recorded in Ventura, California.